Hey, what's up? PizzaLovingNerd here. It's finally here. Things are about to get steamy. Yes, I finally got a Steam Deck, and it is probably my favorite console ever. Now, to be fair, I have only owned Nintendo consoles. I've had a Wii, a Wii U, and a Switch, and I've also had an Xbox 360 and a PS Vita. And this smashes all of them. I have heard people say that the deck is somewhat of a spiritual successor to the PS Vita, and I would somewhat agree because this had close to console quality games. You had Borderlands 2 and you had a Call of Duty. However, I don't really think that's a fair comparison because while this kind of played console-like games, this actually plays console games. At least the ones on Steam. You know, console games ported to PC. You know what I mean. Anyways, let's just cut to the unboxing. Just know, tripod was broken when I filmed this, so be warned for cringe because I unboxed with one hand and filmed with the other. Alright, it's time for the one-hand unboxing. Shout out to FedEx. This is the first package I've ever gotten shipped from FedEx that doesn't have a dent on it. Although this is kind of a disaster because I ripped off the labeling so I don't get doxxed. So let's pop this open. The one-hand unboxing experience. We have like 15 different languages here. Attention! Get this out of here. Right here we have, I think this is the power adapter. Is that it? One-hand unboxing. And yes, this is the power adapter. Here it is. Don't really like how thick it is, but whatever. Your games are going places. By the way, just while I get this open, this video was very expensive, so check out the new risiOS store. There are some cool shirts. Also, if you haven't already, check out risiOS in general, but that has nothing to do with this unboxing. And here's the case for it. Oh, there's like this little slider. Oh, this is so sad. So there's like this thing So there's like this thing that you just slide off to get this paper off. Kind of hard to do with one hand, but whatever. Here's the case for it. Oh, they have like this little tab for the zipper. Let's open her up, and who cares about the case when you got the Steam Deck? Unboxing done. Let's talk about the hardware, which I love. My favorite thing about it is the controller layout. Really comfortable to hold, and I played on it almost the entire time during a family road trip, and I didn't get tired of holding it at all. I love the trackpads on it, and also the gyro controls. Trackpads really make me feel like this is the only controller that is usable for an FPS game, coming from gaming on PC a ton, because you can do some pretty precise aiming with that trackpad. And then the gyro controls go on top of it, where you use the gyro controls for a little bit more precise aiming, and that for any single player FPS game makes it pretty easy to not just miss your shots completely for games that don't have aim assist. Of course, for a multiplayer FPS game, you're still probably going to get destroyed compared to a keyboard and mouse player, but a lot less so than if you're playing with an Xbox controller. Now, I will say the gyro, when I first started using the gyro, I actually got really annoyed at it. However, the more you use the gyro, the more you get used to it, and eventually you can get really good at aiming with a combination between the joysticks, the trackpad, and the gyro. Now, one thing I don't like about the Deck's controller is the back buttons. Now, I do like that they're there just because a lot of keyboard and mouse games may use a bunch of extra keyboard controls, which might not have enough room for a standard controller, so having 4 extra spots for buttons is a really good idea. It's part of how they're able to translate PC games so well to this. However, I feel like they take a little bit too much force in order to press them. I have only had the Steam Deck for a week, so maybe the buttons just need a little bit more wear and tear before they're actually easier to press. But right now, I feel like I have to put a lot of force into pressing these buttons, which makes me have to think about them whenever I use them, which kind of takes me out of the immersion of a game. So maybe if they were a little bit easier to press and less clicky, or if I just wear them in more, maybe I'll appreciate these buttons more. But for now, anytime a game makes me use these, like Half-Life 2 made me use these, I get annoyed and I switch them out for different buttons. Now let's talk about software. SteamOS is great, but you're not getting the full polish of something like a PS Vita or a Nintendo Switch. However, this will be a lot more polished than any gaming handheld you'll get that is running Windows. Just running Windows or even a non-SteamOS Linux distro just doesn't feel like it would work right on most handhelds. And so I probably wouldn't buy any handheld that couldn't run SteamOS, or even something like Halo ISO would be fine as long as that would work. So in my opinion, SteamOS is a major reason to buy the deck. While it still does lack most of that polish, it is getting there on the UI front. When I was watching Steam Deck reviews back from when this thing first started coming out and people were first start getting it, a lot of people were mentioning different UI quirks. However, most of the stuff that other people said in their reviews, I have not noticed at all because Valve has fixed them. The only UI quirk I have noticed is that if you need to redeem a CD key, for example, like for example, I tried to play GTA 5 and it wants a game key. The game key UI is slightly broken on theming. Doesn't like get in your way. It's a small theming bug, I feel like. It's kind of like a GDK 3 theming bug you might have sometimes. But that's the only thing I've found so far. As a matter of fact, I would also recommend enabling the Steam Beta because Steam Beta is still pretty damn stable and you still get a ton of updates and UI fixes sooner than you would with a normal Steam stable build. That said, especially with the Steam Beta, the UI aspect has been getting more and more polished every day, and I think by the end of the year, this UI will be just as polished as a mainstream gaming console. However, what probably won't be a polished experience for a while is running games. I have been gaming on Linux for almost 5 years now, so I know how to get stuff working, and generally, if you are willing to tinker, you can basically get any video game you want working, except for non-native multiplayer games with anti-cheat. However, if you aren't familiar with Linux, you can definitely notice some quirks. For example, back to that GTA 5 example of the CD keys, because GTA 5 uses Rockstar Launcher, when you install it, it opens up Rockstar Launcher, and then you have to go back to Steam to get your CD key, and it did not paste correctly into Rockstar Launcher, so I ended up having to take a photo on my phone of the CD key so that I can enter it in manually in Rockstar Launcher. Another game I had to fight with is actually a deck verified game called Distance. This is a Linux native game, however, when I tried it, the control scheme didn't work at all because it didn't detect the Steam Deck controller, and it ran horribly on the Steam Deck. However, both of these I was able to fix by turning it to run through Proton instead of Steam native. Then, Distance actually ran pretty good. However, there are some games, like I said, that you will have to do small fights with, like those two examples, in order to get them working. But if you know even a little bit about gaming on Linux, you can easily fix a lot of these problems or find workarounds. For example, ProtonDB has a lot of launch options that can optimize your gameplay experience on certain games, and Proton GE is a fork of Proton with a few game-specific tasks that may improve some experiences for some games on SteamOS. So far gaming has been a pretty good experience for me. Now let's go back to the software because I'd like to talk about how SteamOS works behind the scenes because I haven't really seen a video go into that. Maybe there's some video from a Linux YouTuber I missed, but I haven't seen any videos go into that. SteamOS is not a standard Linux distro. Yes, it is based on Arch. However, it's more similar to something like Silverblue than it is to Arch. Basically, by default, it uses a read-only file system and it has two partitions, one with each image of SteamOS. And when you update, it just moves your current image to the backup partition and then installs the new SteamOS image on the main partition. This is similar to an image-based OS tree Linux distro like Fedora Silverblue, although I don't think it uses OS tree specifically. I might be wrong there, don't quote me on that. But it does have a read-only file system. When I heard that SteamOS 3.0 was Arch-based, I was kind of concerned because I know Arch, you might have to do some manual intervention for updates and stuff like that, which is not good for a consumer console, and that did worry me. However, this read-only file system and image-based approach is kind of how they get around this limitation with Arch, and that makes it a great seamless experience for the end user. For the tinkerers out there, this does mean that Pac-Man is broken out of the box and you are forced to use Flatpaks for all your non-Steam apps. However, you can go in and set the file system to be write-only and install Pac-Man packages. However, SteamOS will wipe Pac-Man packages if you do this because it is reverting to a new image and it overwrites your old system, which would have your Pac-Man packages. That said, if you go into desktop mode and install Flatpaks, either manually or through Discover, Flatpaks will work great, and you can even add Flatpaks as non-Steam games, and they will integrate with SteamOS for you. This is great if you want to play something like Super Tux Car, or if you want to play something from the Epic Games Store using Heroic or something like that, and you can even set up RetroArch and different emulators through this. Desktop mode itself is running Plasma, using a amazing looking Vapor theme, although if you are a fan of Half-Life 1, there is also a pre-installed VGUI 2 Classic theme that matches the old Half-Life 1 style. This makes running SteamOS as a desktop similar to running something like Fedora Silverblue, or actually more like Fedora Kyanite, because it runs KDE Plasma. However, you have to use it like a Kyanite system too, because even though it's Arch-based, like I mentioned earlier, Pac-Man doesn't work and you can only use Flatpaks. So, As long as you're fine using only Flatpaks, SteamOS actually works great as a desktop OS if you really want to turn the Steam Deck into your actual PC. Overall, this is probably my new favorite piece of gaming hardware ever. This is a handheld that can play basically any generation of games, from current gen games to Elden Ring and any other game that isn't a multiplayer game of anti-cheat, basically. And you can even play any other generation of games, including PS3 through a PS3 emulator and original Xbox through emulation, just any console you want through emulation. And Valve is pro-consumer, so they let you get in, install non-Steam games. You can even put Windows on this if you want, which don't do that. So, you can get one of these, get one of these. You will not regret it if you're techie enough to do some hacks to get your games working. Anyways, that is it. Thanks to my patrons who donate $10 or more, including Mitchell Vantino, Sam Covett, Tech Hut, Frank, and Jim Peter. Have a good one.